Millionaire catches black cleaner studying in the dark. What happens next leaves everyone stunned. What the hell are you doing here? Richard Sterling's sharp voice cut through the silence of the penthouse at 3 in the morning, startling the 26-year-old woman who looked up from the textbook scattered across the marble floor. Kesha Williams remained seated with unnerving composure, her small flashlight illuminating the dense pages of advanced calculus. Around her, cleaning supplies and neatly folded rags testified that her shift was already finished. Yet here she was, studying as though the 30 million penthouse were her personal library. "Mr. Sterling," she answered evenly, her calm tone sparking something unexpected in the millionaire's chest. "I've completed the cleaning. I was just taking a moment to study before going home." Richard descended the marble staircase with deliberate weight, his silk pajamas a stark contrast to the cleaner's modest uniform. At 42, he had built a real estate empire by being merciless toward anyone who didn't know their place. And in his mind, a cleaning lady studying in his penthouse certainly did not study. He scoffed cruelly. "Do you have any idea where you are? This isn't some public library. It's my home, and I pay you to clean, not to play student." Kesha calmly closed the book, tucking away the $5 calculator she had bought at a corner store. There was something almost mesmerizing in her movements, unhurried, unshaken, as if she had endured storms far greater than this and survived them all. "With respect, sir, every task is done. The place is spotless, just as I always leave it." Her answer only fueled Richard's anger. For half a year, Kesha had been invisible to him, just another worker who appeared, cleaned, and vanished. But seeing her now with college texts, studying advanced calculus as if she dared to dream beyond her station, awakened something primal and hostile in him. "Listen closely," he said, leaning in to loom over her. "People like you have a place in this world. Stop pretending to be something you're not. It's pathetic." Something flickered in Kesha's eyes then, just enough to make Richard step back instinctively. It wasn't fury. It was far more unsettling, the quiet assurance of someone guarding a secret too powerful to reveal before its time. "People like me," she repeated softly, drawing out each word. "That's an interesting view, Mr. Sterling." In those 6 months of working in his penthouse, Kesha had been more watchful than Richard could ever guess. She had overheard conversations, glanced at papers left unattended, and witnessed meetings where shady deals were made. Information a man as arrogant as Richard would never imagine a cleaner could grasp, or worse, carefully record. "You're fired," Richard pronounced coldly. "Gather your things and leave, and don't bother asking me for a reference." Kesha rose slowly, collecting her books with the same dignity she had shown while studying. At the doorway, she paused and turned back, wearing that enigmatic smile that had unsettled him minutes earlier. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice echoing against the marble walls. "Have you ever heard the saying about never underestimating those who are always watching?" The words lingered in the air like a subtle warning as Kesha walked out, carrying not only her books but also 6 months' worth of damning observations about a man who had just sealed his fate. She carried herself like someone safeguarding knowledge too volatile to reveal prematurely. Because Kesha wasn't merely a wronged cleaner. She was an economics graduate, summa cum laude, who had spent half a year gathering hard evidence of crimes Richard never imagined she was capable of deciphering. If this story of arrogance and underestimation touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see how one moment of prejudice would become the spark for a downfall that changed both of their lives forever. The next morning, Richard Sterling awoke with an irritation he couldn't quite explain. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind. It wasn't the cleaner's insolence. He had dealt with that before. It was her look, that unsettling calm, as though she held knowledge he didn't. "Absurd," he muttered, straightening his $1,000 Italian tie. "A cleaner trying to rattle me." But his annoyance deepened when his assistant, Janet, entered his office with a troubled expression. "Mr. Sterling," the cleaning company called. "They're asking why Kesha Williams was dismissed. Apparently, she was their highest-rated employee." "Reason?" Richard sneered. "She didn't know her place. I caught her studying in my home like it was a library." "Outrageous," Janet hesitated. "Sir, may I ask what she was studying?" "I don't care if it was a gossip rag or an instruction manual." Richard slammed the desk. "House staff do not study in their employer's home. Period." What Richard didn't realize was that, While he fumed in his luxurious office, Kesha was at a modest public library in her neighborhood. She wasn't weeping or despairing, as he might have assumed. She was doing something far more dangerous, organizing 6 months of carefully compiled evidence. Throughout her time at the penthouse, Kesha had perfected a routine. She always arrived 40 minutes early, not out of blind diligence, but because she had learned Richard's habit of leaving sensitive documents scattered after late night meetings with partners and investors. Land contracts in district sector surge in value due to insider tips from city officials. Bribe payments disguised as consulting fees to fast-track permits. Messages coordinating rigged prices at public auctions with other magnates. Kesha hadn't merely noticed these things. She had photographed them with an old cell phone no one would suspect capable of capturing such detail. Her economics degree from State University, where she graduated summa cum laude while juggling 3 jobs, had given her not only the technical expertise to decode these schemes, but also the iron discipline to see a long game through. That diploma now sat tucked in a drawer in the small home she shared with her mother and 2 younger sisters. For 2 years after graduation, she had sent out resumes to every major financial consulting firm in the city. The few replies she received were polite rejections, all dismissing her as not the right cultural fit. So she changed her strategy. If the front doors of the financial world remained locked, she would slip in through the back. Literally, securing a job as a cleaner for the wealthy elite wasn't an accident, it was a calculated move. Kesha had studied schedules, hiring patterns, and household placements until she discovered that Richard Sterling needed a new cleaner. She applied that very day. "Do you have references?" the supervisor asked. "I have something better," Kesha answered with the same enigmatic smile that would one day haunt Richard. "I'm not afraid of hard work." For 6 months, she remained invisible to him. Just as planned, she cleaned flawlessly, collected evidence, and disappeared each night without a trace, until she finally had enough material, and only needed a reason to be fired without arousing suspicion about her true motives. Her late-night calculus study session hadn't been recklessness. It was bait. She knew Richard would return home at that exact hour. She had memorized his rigid Thursday routine. When he returned early from his business dinners at the club, she knew he would react exactly as he did, with arrogance and prejudice. Now, seated at the public library, Kesha opened a second-hand laptop she had purchased with her savings and began arranging the most explosive dossier high society had ever seen. It wasn't merely proof of corruption, but a comprehensive map of how Richard Sterling had built his $30 million empire on bribes, insider dealings, and the manipulation of public contracts. Her phone vibrated with a message from her 16-year-old sister. "Jennifer, Kush, did you get another job? Mom's worried about the bills this month." Kesha stared at the screen, then at the neatly stacked documents spread before her. For years, her family had sacrificed everything so she could pursue her studies. Her mother, Barbara, worked endless double shifts as a nurse in a public hospital. Jennifer and Tracy, at 18, shared a part-time job at a diner to help cover expenses. They deserved better than the poverty they endured. They deserved justice. And Richard Sterling, who had amassed his fortune by trampling on people like her, was about to learn that he had underestimated the wrong woman. "Tell Mom not to worry," Kesha typed back. "Soon everything will change for us." What Richard Sterling never imagined, as he bragged to his partners about having put an insolent employee in her place, was that each moment of disdain had been carefully documented by someone who not only possessed the proof of his crimes, but also the education to know how to use it to dismantle his empire, brick by brick. Every insult, every humiliation only fed a quiet strength within Kesha, a force invisible to men like Richard, born from the very injustices they imposed, slowly and methodically preparing their downfall. 3 weeks after her dismissal, financial hardship hit the Williams family like a hurricane. Kesha's final paycheck had gone to buy blood pressure medication for her mother, and now only $43 remained in her wallet. "Kush, did you get anything today?" Jennifer asked, coming home after yet another double shift at the diner. At 16, she carried burdens no teenager should bear. "I'm still searching," Kesha lied, quickly shutting the notebook where she had catalogued her evidence against Richard. She couldn't tell her family her true plan. They wouldn't understand why she was refusing cleaning jobs, waiting instead for the perfect moment to strike. Meanwhile, Richard Sterling reveled in his charmed life. At the exclusive golf club where he met his partners every Thursday, he retold the story of the insolent cleaning lady as though it were a private joke. "You won't believe this," he laughed, swirling a 300 glass of whiskey. "I caught her studying calculus in my living room." Calculus. His friends jeered, erupting in laughter. As if a cleaning lady could even comprehend advanced mathematics. Among those listening was Marcus Thompson, a young investigative journalist who worked part-time as a waiter at the club to cover college expenses. Marcus knew the world of corrupt elites all too well. Raised in the same inner-city neighborhood as Kesha, he had earned a scholarship through sheer determination and now specialized in exposing money laundering schemes among the city's wealthy. The next morning, Marcus found Kesha at the public library. "Sorry to disturb you," he said carefully, approaching the table where she was working. "My name's Marcus Thompson. I'm a journalist. I heard you used to work for Richard Sterling." Kesha looked up, studying the young man's demeanor. There was something in his voice, in his stance, that told her he wasn't just another curious passerby. "I did." "Why?" "Because I've been investigating him for 2 years, and I've never been able to get close enough to obtain solid evidence." Marcus sat down, lowering his voice. "But someone who lived inside his home for months." That was when Kesha realized she had found exactly what she needed. Not just a contact in the media, but someone who already understood Richard's methods and had the resources to turn evidence into consequences. "What kind of proof are you looking for?" she asked, opening her notebook for someone else to see for the first time. Marcus's eyes widened at the careful organization before him. Fraudulent contracts, records of suspicious payments, schemes coordinated with other businessmen, all indexed by date, amount, and participants. "My God," he breathed. "This could bring down not just Sterling, but half the city's business elite." "I'm not finished yet," Kesha replied with that enigmatic smile that had haunted Richard weeks earlier. "I still have 3 contacts confirming fraudulent bids at City Hall." Over the following weeks, while Kesha pretended to continue job hunting to keep her family reassured, she and Marcus worked side by side to build an unshakable case. Every document was verified, every transfer traced, every participant identified. Richard, utterly unaware of what was unfolding, made his gravest mistake yet. During an investor meeting in his penthouse, the same place where he had mocked her, he was caught on a security camera offering bribes for inside information on a public housing project. The irony was exquisite. The same man who had sneered at Kesha for studying was now on tape conspiring to steal resources meant for people just like her. "We've got it," Marcus said, showing her the recording. "With this, plus the documents you collected, we can release a series of reports that will rock the city's entire power structure." Kesha stared at the screen, watching Richard gesture smugly as he explained how to manipulate public contracts. For a fleeting moment, she savored the satisfaction of imagining his expression when he realized he had been outsmarted by the cleaning lady he had so despised. "When do we go public?" she asked. "Next Monday. Front page, main website, simultaneous social media blasts," Marcus said with a grin. "There'll be no way to bury it." That night, Kesha returned home to find her mother waiting in the living room with that knowing look only mothers carry when they sense something significant. "My daughter, you've been different. Calmer, more focused. What are you planning?" Kesha embraced Barbara, breathing in the familiar scent of hospital disinfectant that always lingered after her shifts. "Mum, do you remember when you told me that one day our lives would change?" "I remember. That day is here. On Monday, the world will see who I really am." Barbara cupped her daughter's face, recognizing in her eyes the same fierce determination that had once carried a girl from the slums to graduate summa cum laude while working 3 jobs. "What have you done?" "Kesha. Justice, Mama. Nothing but justice." While Richard Sterling slept soundly in his $30 million penthouse, convinced he had silenced the problem of an insolent cleaning woman, Kesha Williams was putting the final touches on a retribution that would not only transform their lives, but also shatter the very power structure men like him used to crush those beneath them. What the privileged man could never imagine was that every condescending act had been preserved by someone who not only held proof of his corruption, but also the academic discipline to orchestrate his downfall, so thoroughly that escape was no longer possible. Monday, 6 a.m. Richard Sterling awoke to the relentless ringing of his cell phone. First his personal assistant, then the company lawyer, then 3 different journalists, all speaking at once about explosive headlines and breaking news. "What the hell are you talking about?" Richard barked into the phone, still in his pajamas as he walked into the penthouse living room where he normally enjoyed breakfast while admiring his exclusive view of the city. That's when he saw it. His own photograph sprawled across the front page of the region's biggest newspaper, beside a bold headline, "Millionaire empire built on bribes and fraud. Exclusive documents expose corruption scheme." Richard's knees nearly gave way. He snatched up the newspaper with trembling hands, scanning each word. Every paragraph felt like a dagger to the chest. Fraudulent contracts he thought no one had seen. Text messages arranging bribes he was certain he had erased. Recordings of private conversations in what he believed were secure settings. "Impossible," he muttered, flipping through the pages in panic. How the hell did they get this? Marcus Thompson's article was a masterclass in investigative journalism. Every accusation was backed by documents, photographs, bank records, a complete roadmap of how Richard had turned bribery into assets, insider tips into profits, and manipulation into an empire. But it was on the second page that his world truly collapsed. A photo of him offering a bribe inside his own penthouse, time-stamped to the exact day and hour. Beneath it, a caption that made his blood run cold: "Evidence provided by an anonymous source with privileged access to the businessman's residence for months." Anonymous source with months of access. Richard whispered, the realization dawning. Months. His phone rang again. This time, it was the president of the bank where he held his main accounts. "Richard, we need to speak immediately. Federal auditors are already in the building." Before he could even respond, another call came through, this time from the mayor, his voice strained with panic. "Sterling, you've dragged me into this mess. I have no choice but to cut all ties with you at once." One by one, the very people who had built his empire began to abandon him. Investors demanded their funds be returned. Business partners claimed they had been deceived. Authorities announced formal criminal investigations. By 9 o'clock that morning, Richard was barricaded inside his penthouse office, watching his empire disintegrate in real time on live television. Anchors reported his crimes as undeniable facts. Legal analysts calculated the years he could spend in prison. His bank accounts had already been frozen as a safeguard. That was when the doorbell rang. "Mr. Sterling." A calm, unmistakable female voice echoed through the intercom. "It's Kesha Williams. I've come to return something you left behind." Richard felt the air drain from his lungs. Kesha, the cleaning lady he had humiliated, dismissed, and written off as insignificant. The woman he had mocked as incompetent, treated as beneath him, and grossly underestimated. With trembling fingers, he pressed the buzzer to let her in. Minutes later, she stood before him, no longer in her cleaning uniform, but in a simple blazer, holding a leather briefcase identical to those carried by his attorneys. "I wanted to deliver this in person," Kesha said, placing a copy of that morning's newspaper on his desk, the front page bearing her photograph. "I thought you might appreciate an autographed edition." Richard stared at her, unable to reconcile the transformation before him, the upright posture, the unwavering gaze, the calm authority in her every movement. How had he failed to see that she was so much more than what he had assumed? "It was me," she whispered. "I gathered all the evidence. For 6 months, Mr. Sterling, every time you carelessly left documents around the house, convinced that a mere cleaning woman couldn't comprehend complex financial records or spot proof of money laundering. I was studying them." The truth struck Richard with the force of a tidal wave. "Your degree, economics," he stammered. "Graduated summa cum laude, State University." Kesha replied with a faint smile, the same enigmatic smile that had unsettled him weeks earlier. Now its meaning was clear. The irony is almost poetic. "You fired me for studying calculus, never realizing I had already earned the expertise to decipher every one of your schemes." Richard slumped into his chair, finally confronting the scale of his arrogance. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Because men like you build fortunes by crushing families like mine. Because you believe wealth makes you untouchable." Kesha leaned closer, her tone sharp with icy composure that made Richard recoil. "But above all, because you made the fatal mistake of judging my intelligence by my skin color and social class." Just then, Richard's phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer. "Richard, the IRS is seizing all your assets. You need to surrender voluntarily before they issue an arrest warrant." Kesha watched his face as he absorbed the words. She saw the exact moment he understood that everything, his wealth, his reputation, his freedom was gone, all because of the woman he had dismissed as an inept cleaning lady. "There's one last thing, Mr. Sterling," she said, moving toward the door. "My family will never face financial hardship again. The reward for cooperating with investigators was more than enough to secure my mother's retirement, cover my sister's college education, and allow me to finally pursue the career I studied so hard for." Richard looked up at her, framed in the doorway of the same penthouse where he had once humiliated her. "You planned this from the very beginning." "No, Mr. Sterling. I simply prepared for the right moment, and you, with your arrogance and prejudice, handed me the opportunity to turn 6 months of quiet observation into the evidence that toppled your empire of lies." As Richard Sterling faced the ruin of his life, the looming decades behind bars, the collapse of his fortune, Kesha Williams stepped out into the city with the serene conviction of someone who had proven that intelligence and persistence always outlast arrogance and prejudice, even when the odds appear unwinnable. 6 months later, Richard Sterling sat inside a federal prison, wearing an orange jumpsuit that mocked the 3,000 suits he once wore. His sentence: 15 years for racketeering, money laundering, and corruption. The 30 million empire had been dismantled piece by piece, properties liquidated, accounts seized, investments obliterated. The man who once sneered at a cleaning woman for not knowing her place now shared a cell block with hardened criminals who treated him as he had once treated Kesha, with disdain. Meanwhile, Kesha Williams began her first day as a senior analyst at the city's most prestigious financial consulting firm. Her office, with sweeping views, was located in the very building where Richard had closed his corrupt deals, but 3 floors higher than he had ever climbed. "Excellent work on the compliance report, Kesha," her supervisor Dr. Martinez told her. "Your analysis saved this company from falling into a scheme almost identical to Sterling's. You protected our reputation." The recognition was rewarding, but what truly warmed Kesha's heart was watching her family flourish. Her mother, Barbara, had retired from nursing and spent her days tending a garden at their new home. Jennifer was thriving in medical school with the help of a scholarship Kesha had secured through her network. Tracy was studying law, inspired by her sister's fight for justice. "Kesh, did you see this?" Jennifer said one evening, walking in with a newspaper. The headline showed Richard being transferred to a maximum security prison after a violent altercation with other inmates. "The man who humiliated you is having a rough time." Kesha glanced at the photo, neither satisfied nor sympathetic. "He brought this on himself, Jen. I only documented the truth." The real change was not just in Kesha's life, but in the ripple effect of her story. Marcus Thompson had won a prestigious journalism award for his series on corporate corruption and had launched a foundation helping young people from the inner city expose injustice in business. At her alma mater, Kesha spoke before 500 economics students. "When that man told me people like me had a place in society, he was right," she said, sparking laughter from the audience. "But our place is determined by our competence and perseverance, not by the prejudice that tries to contain us." A student asked, "How did you remain so calm during the 6 months you were collecting evidence?" "Because I learned that anger without a plan is just noise, but anger with a strategy, that becomes justice." Richard, watching the broadcast on a prison television, finally grasped the depth of his arrogance. The woman he had called incompetent was now a consultant for multinational corporations, a sought-after speaker, and a leading voice in the fight against corruption. His former partners, who once laughed with him about the insolent cleaning lady, were now entangled in their own investigations thanks to the evidence Kesha had supplied. The exclusive golf club where they had ridiculed her had lost half its membership in disgrace. "Every person we underestimate carries potential we cannot see," Kesha said in a final interview. Richard Sterling had believed her social status defined her intellect. That arrogance cost him his freedom and his fortune. Her story carried far beyond their personal feud. Companies reviewed their hiring practices. Universities launched inclusion programs. Young people in disadvantaged neighborhoods embraced her journey as proof that origins do not dictate destiny. He tried to destroy Kesha, but in the end, he destroyed only himself. Kesha discovered that true revenge isn't retaliation. It's succeeding in ways your enemies never imagined possible. If this story of transformation and justice inspired you, Subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove intelligence and determination always triumph over arrogance and prejudice, no matter how impossible the fight may seem at first.